There are three red arrows, which are pointing obviously to red heads. But when you zoom in, there is one head, and the third red arrow is pointing to the red pillow somewhere in the corner. He had to invent the facts to back up the script. Something is definitely shady here. Something doesn't add up.
There's a lot of contradictory information.
There is a synchronized effort across Russian media outlets and apparently now American bloggers and media outlets as well. They repeated and parroted the Kremlin narratives against ALLATRA word to word. There's no such journalist, turns out. It reminded me of doppelganger.
It's subtle, right? You might read through it and not realize.
You know, it happens primarily before the elections. Who is benefiting from it? In today's video, we are going to discuss how there is a massive effort on the side of Russian FSB to interfere with American elections. And we are going to deep dive into exact methods and the methodology which is used in order to interfere, to disinform, and to destabilize the situation in the US. Part of this playbook is attacking NGOs and organizations such as ALLATRA, which are being used as a scapegoat in order to connect them to politicians and later influence their ratings and the outcome of the election. This is not the first time the playbook like this is being used, and we are going to go through specific examples of how it's been used before, and you will see for yourself how this influences, and have you been influenced by such narratives? What is ALLATRA? International volunteer organization with primary focus on climate and environmental threats. ALLATRA is grassroots and organized around three core areas: research, education, and advocacy. ALLATRA prepares reports, organizes conferences, briefings, seminars, and expert workshops. ALLATRA Global Research Center has published an analytical report, Nanoplastics: A Systemic Risk Analysis for Human Health, Ecosystems, and Environment. This report is intended for scientific community, regulatory authorities, policy institutions, and general public. If you simply go through this document, you will see how valuable and incredibly unique what ALLATRA is doing. The findings of the report have been presented in European Parliament, so the policymakers can make decisions based on the most recent and up-to-date holistic data on topic of micro and nanoplastics. ALLATRA's documentary Nanoplastics: Threat to Life has received multiple awards on international film festivals. ALLATRA makes complex scientific topics understandable and accessible to general audience. ALLATRA is also actively involved in the topic of protection of human rights, and its reports in OSCE, congressional briefings in the US, and multiple other conferences, including the conference in support of Ukraine. You can see the list on the website. Beginning in 2015, as a part of broader crackdown on civil society in Russia, ALLATRA has been subject to defamatory campaigns and persecutions in this country, so as many other organizations. Eventually, it was prohibited, declared first undesirable and then extremist. Currently, the former volunteers are facing persecutions by FSB. The defamatory information campaign is still ongoing, and the purpose of it is to justify violence against law-abiding citizens. Just within one single week, biggest Russian media channel puts out a demonizing the most disgusting article about ALLATRA, where ALLATRA is being accused of all the things they could possibly come up with to scare Russian audience. Supporting Ukraine, being in bed with American government. At the same time, the blogger from the US with a multi-million following puts out a video in which he repeats all the talking points of Russian propaganda that were used in Russia to ban ALLATRA, to demonize it, to discredit it, to make sure that nobody would care when, regular volunteers will be swept off the streets by Russian FSB and tortured in prisons with plastic bags over their heads, with electroshocks, and thrown into jail for simply being volunteers, for doing good things for the society. The very next day after the video, another article is being published where ALLATRA is again being demonized and accused of being pro-Putin. Again, at the very same time when in Russia, ALLATRA is being accused for being pro-Ukrainian, being, demonized for it, for supporting Ukrainian armed forces. Like, this is specifically what former ALLATRA members right now are receiving prison sentences with confiscation, by the way, confiscation of entire property. So at the very same time, any sane person would say this, like something is definitely shady here. Something doesn't add up. And this is exactly what we're going to talk about in today's episode.
Yeah, man, I think there's a lot of interesting information here, and there's a lot of contradictory information. And I think that, Americans are really smart. And now that this YouTube video is blown up, it's given us a perfect opportunity to really, explain what's actually going on here, what ALLATRA is all about, and just kind of shine some light on some of these contradictory narratives and help paint a little bit of a fuller picture.
So first of all, the whole campaign against ALLATRA was initiated in Russia in 2014 with Russian anti-cult or Inquisition Department of Russian Orthodox Church, led by Alexander Dworkin, who is notorious for his mental issues, drug abuse. It's all very well documented. It's all been shown in multiple investigations, including on the actfiles.org. So all the insane accusations that he could possibly come up with, they were used not only against ALLATRA, but against all organizations which were not under control of Russian FSB or were posing, as they were thinking, as threat to Russian Orthodox Church, their competitors, or simply independent businesses, NGOs, even political oppositions. They all were labeled as cultists and banned in Russia. Besides that, Dworkin established a very unique international structure, which reassembles a totalitarian cult. In fact, organization that he established, according to the checklist of what is a cult, established by the very same guy, checks out all the boxes. And when we looking into who is actually promoting the very same ideology in other countries, it's all people connected to this very person. Let's take, for example, Alexandra Stein. She has been Dworkin's closest ally in the United Kingdom, heavily involved into pushing the very same agenda, attempting to change the legislation in the very same way as Dworkin did. She has close ties in BBC and multiple media. And now recently, Open Democracy website publishing a piece against ALLATRA. They publishing this really nasty publication. And you wonder, why would they be interested in doing that? And then you search and you find Alexandra Stein is right there among their contributors. And again, somebody was really investing into this effort, because not only they published the article on their website, they also republished it on multiple other websites. And when we decided to take a look, what are those websites? Like, for example, Nepali Times. Why would Nepali Times be interested in attacking ALLATRA? There is no reason at all. But if you look, and one of our volunteers actually found in Facebook that there was a post that Nepali Times is one of the platforms for paid promotion. You can pay and publish anything over there. So here's another proof that somebody was investing serious amount of money into defamation campaign against ALLATRA. And those people are directly connected to Alexandra Stein, who is directly connected to Alexander Dworkin. All the connections, whenever there is attack piece against ALLATRA, they always lead to Russia, to Moscow, to Alexander Dworkin and his office. So I decided to take a closer look at the article which was published on August 3rd, 2026 on some weird website, Protos, whatever. Apparently, Cas Piansi is the author of the article. He's against cryptocurrencies and so on. And he's attacking Brock Pierce for being with ALLATRA, right? For giving an interview to ALLATRA, which he calls pro-Putin's cult. At the very same time, the same article on the same day is being published on another Bit Times website. And here it's authored by Evan Walker. I decided to take a look. Who is this guy, Evan Walker? There's no such journalist, turns out. There is, however, a gentleman with the same name, Evan Walker, who is a CEO of e-commerce startup. He sold it for $10 million. He is based in Florida, and he has a page on Forbes, right? Forbes make an article about him, like legit successful entrepreneur. If you look at his face and you look at the face they used for Evan Walker on this website, it looks like they took the entrepreneur's face, made AI version of it, used his name, and came up with a fake persona to publish nonsense, basically on this website. You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of Doppelganger, the operation which was launched by Russian FSB, signed off by Sergei Kiriyenko before the election in 2024 to influence American election. They were creating the doppelgangers, so the websites which would look similar to like big media outlets known in the West, like the Washington Times, BBC, CNN, but the URL would be a little bit off. It was a successful operation. They fooled a lot of people with it, but it was exposed, and it's well known that it was a Kremlin project. So take a look. Some guy who is against crypto and who's running the articles against ALLATRA and trying to tie Brock Pierce here. Apparently, he's attacking Brock Pierce because he's all about crypto. Cas Pianci is involved with the same doppelganger stuff with the fake persona they have here, sharing information. So that's interesting. I decided to Google also Cas. Who's Cas, right? And you know what I found? So Cas Pianci is shown in search results along with Dave Troy. Now, Dave Troy is one of the guys who has been the closest allies of Stephen Hassan. Stephen Hassan is the closest ally of Alexander Dworkin. So again, we're seeing the same connection with Dworkin, who is involved with FSB, Stephen Hassan, Dave Troy. And it's not the first guy that Dave Troy is using against ALLATRA, supposedly, allegedly. The previous one, Matt Bernardini, also published smearing publications against ALLATRA and also participated on the same events with Dave Troy, Heidi Kuda, Jim Stewartson, and a bunch of other people. All of them have one thing in common: attack against ALLATRA according to the blueprint of Alexander Dworkin. Like, we have to understand one thing. This blogger and all of the other guys, they did not invent a single thing. They did not do any investigation. They repeated and parroted the Kremlin narratives against ALLATRA word to word, as if they received a folder with a script and simply had to read it out loud for the American audience this time. So we want to say thank you to all the effort. Like, it's really flattering as a participant of ALLATRA, as I think for all of us, that FSB, that Kremlin, that all Russian propaganda machine using all their agents in this attack. I feel really honored that there is so much effort to, attack, discredit ALLATRA, both in Russia and using their network of influence for the Western audience.
That certainly can't be a cheap endeavor either, right? You got this entire network of people sharing this rhetoric, but they have to be paid. They have to be, there has to be some incentive for them to get out there and start making these blogger videos, getting on podcasts, talking about ALLATRA constantly. Granted, it's probably saved them some time to just copy and paste the same thing over and over again, but it still takes a little bit of manpower, minus the bots and things like that. But it is quite flattering. And just to clarify what you were saying, Tully, so all these people, right, connected to Dave Troy, sharing the same podcast with one another, copy and paste in this rhetoric. And they're using these like crypto websites just to essentially bash some dude that What's his name? The guy with the hat. Yeah. Brock Pierce. So now
Brock
they're
Pierce.
trying to um, merge Brock Pierce's name with support simply because of one interview. Is that's what's going on here?
Yeah, like, what do we know about Brock Pierce? Nice hats, really beautiful hats. He has a really strong head game. Other than that, well, he gave an interview to ALLATRA. Great interview, by the way. It's available, anyone can watch it. He showed up at the event with Pastor Mark Burns, had a speech over there, which is also publicly available. And that's it. But based on this, somebody who has been attacking him for quite a while is trying to attack him publicly by attaching to ALLATRA while running smear campaign against ALLATRA. So the very same playbook that we have seen before, nothing changed, all according to the script of Russian FSB. But again, their tactics is to first attack the organization and then tie certain politicians to this organization in order to demonize them before the election to drop their ratings. And this is not a coincidence that attack against ALLATRA is happening right now, only a few months before the midterm election in the US. Apparently, somebody is trying really hard to, smear politicians which are not under their control and put up front into, positions of power those who are going to collaborate with this network of influence. You can call them anti-cult or whatever, but essentially this is FSB, network of influence. FSB is, for those who don't know, that's a different name for KGB, which they changed, rebranding after the collapse of Soviet Union. But the methodology, the tactics, the everything stayed the same. And by the way, recently ALLATRA recorded an excellent interview with a former senior CIA officer who basically laid out all the methodology and all the disinformation campaigns, how they work. He specializes on Russia. He knows what it is. And you cannot fool people like that who are really experienced, who know what it is. And let's take a look now at one interesting moment in the video, which was published at this big, large YouTube channel, which supposedly doing investigations. Maybe he's really doing investigations, but in this case, I see no evidence of any investigationary work done. But you know what I noticed? I went through the comment section. So it goes, yo, why is he lying to us about the creator of the video? Everyone freeze the video at 36:35. There is one hat on the far left, and then a reflection of the same hat. Then there is a red pillow on the couch. One hat. Why are you making this up, bro? So a really thoughtful viewer who
It's a good
enjoys
question.
investigations, he paused the video exactly on the moment where the narrator says that ALLATRA's place during the search conducted in Ukraine was filled with MAGA hats. And what is he actually showing on the screen at this moment? There are three red arrows, which are pointing obviously to red hats, because he's trying to connect ALLATRA to MAGA movement to, again, discredit the purpose we understand, right? How the logic goes. But when you zoom in, there is one hat, it's red and it's upside down, so who knows what's in there. And then the second arrow points out to the reflection of the very same hat in the mirror. And the third red arrow is pointing to the red pillow somewhere in the corner. So there is no way someone could have done this by mistake. You took time to pause the video, put all the arrows in the right places, zoom in. And why would anyone do this? Like, obviously you had to go through extra efforts to pause the video, put all the arrows in the right places to basically deceive your audience with a fake fact. It can be explained only in one way. If you go by the script that you have been given and you have to find the facts to match the script and you don't have them, in that way, he had to invent the facts to back up the script. So why would anyone go through such an effort to demonize ALLATRA, to attach it to the certain political movement, and then discredit both of them. Mind you, this is happening few weeks before the election. So just 2 years ago, there was a very similar situation when well-known influencers have been basically lured into promoting Russian narratives. Each one of them was receiving $400,000 a month, plus $100,000 of sign-in bonus and additional performance bonuses. So this is a very good incentive in order to invent facts, in order to create fake narratives, and in order to mislead the population. You know, right now, uh, I would say that bloggers, especially apparently there are still American bloggers who are willing to take Russian money to promote the narratives. But bloggers should be much more careful about who they take in the money from, because there are still digital fingerprints, and any sort of transaction can be easily tracked if there is a will to do so.
Yeah. So, if we look at this blogger's page, he's got quite a popular channel. And it's very likely, we don't know if he even knows where he's taking this money from. Someone could have just emailed him, said, "Hey, I think this would be an amazing topic for your channel. We'll pay you some money to cover it." And for him, it's just like, "Hey, like this is great money. This sounds like an interesting story." And he has no clue where it's actually coming from. But we do know that this is a strategy, and now it's a shame that someone that has no idea what's actually going on could be thrown into a very dangerous mix, right? And where at the very end of the video, we see him talking to Jakob, and Jakob has like a very similar, like, "Oh, I fear for my life" type of thing, trying to pretend or say that he's a victim of online bullying and all of these things. And
Yeah, I don't really care if anything happens to me. And then in the comment section, there are also a bunch of comments which are saying you should be worried about yourself after putting out this video and so on. And I find it really strange because such peppering with such ideas could be coming exactly from those people who are actually behind the script, right? Who are trying to do this fear mongering. And uh, I would say I'm worried about Jakub Yal because he can be removed from this equation by his own, by the people who were basically who he was working for, who he was delivering all this, media narratives and so on, because he became too inconvenient recently with all the stories, with all the mess that he initiated. He really started such a story that right now a lot of efforts are being put into whitewashing his reputation. We've seen it in Czech Republic, where there was no investigation after all the documentaries, films, written statements, all the grounds into actually investigating him. But the minister himself said that he believes this man is innocent and no investigation is needed. You know that minister was also his political party was in alliance with a political party that Jakub Jal was supporting. He was collecting donations for that political party. He was wearing a shirt with the logo of that party. Even in Africa, he was painting that logo on the walls, and he was bragging about having very powerful connections in that political party. Politically, it would not be a convenient story to investigate. So there was never investigation into Jakub Jal in Czech Republic, but there is ongoing investigation into Jakub Jal's deeds in Africa. And sooner or later, it's gonna go to its conclusion. And that's where Jakub Jal, he might say more about people he has been working with all along. And those connections are leading to Russia. Those connections exposing the entire network. Actually, even ongoing thing is exposing the entire network of people who have been involved in shady things and now have to cover up for Jakub Jal. So he is creating a threat to his own, you know, leadership, bosses, you can call it whatever you want. He's posing no threat to us. And all of this mess, like we couldn't care less about it. You know, ALLATRA cares about protecting children, about really getting justice for African children who finally received the, you know, attention and voice only after volunteers went there. But you know what? People who have been volunteering in Africa, who were working with Jakub Jal there, they have been trying to break through with the story for years. But every time they were reaching out to journalists, they were either getting no response, and later it turned out that those journalists working with Jakub Jal, or the journalists have been threatened, and Jakub Jal was always there to make sure that the article would not happen. And this tactic has been there for years, and we know from investigations, from all the evidence we have, from interviews with former members of the satanic cult that Jakub Jal established in Czech Republic, that threats, manipulations have always been something that he was using. And you know, his former members, they describe him as highly manipulative person. And you know, we know that Jakub Jal has been using manipulations. For example, one of the former members of the satanic cult, which Jakub Jal was running in Czech Republic, he said following: Jakub Jal's manipulations know no bounds. In the past, he complicated the life of the Mormon church, which he joined only to subsequently leave and tarnish its entire functioning, and also ruined the career of former deputy of a city of Pleasant, so a specific person that he was attacking.
You know what's funny about this, Tully, is a lot of these anti-cultists, right? Everything really is under the guise of protecting people and protecting society against dangerous people. And it is the narrative is on repeat, right? These people are sex offenders. These people are PDF files. These people are child trafficking, or it's always like, and anyone in their right mind would be like, yeah, we should know who these people are, right? Like, if this person is trying to point out seriously dangerous people that do these things, uh, and they're quote unquote a professional, we might want to heed their opinion and listen to them. So it all makes sense on the surface. But what's kind of interesting is when you look at all of these people within the anti cult network that are using this rhetoric and protecting people, and then you look at the background of them, you see these seem it's the same exact testimonies of people that have worked with them before, right? Or you have people like Anton Hein and George Erdely Graham, one running in Mexico. Was it George Erdely Graham that was running the so-called
Jorge Erdely
Christian?
Graham, so he was leading anti-cultist of Mexico. He was in the same organization with Stephen Hassan on the board of directors, and he was running a network of sex trafficking shelters for children, and he was also accused of organ harvesting in those children shelters, and dozens of children have still not been found. They're still missing.
And Anton Hein, he was in what? Was it San Diego, where he had actually in court pleaded
Uh,
guilty?
Anton Hein was convicted for molesting his 13-year-old niece in California. He was in jail, and then he was let out on the parole, and he violated the parole, fleeing California and returning to Netherlands, where he is currently running anti-cult website and his own Christian church community, if you will. Anton Hein is running this thing. Jorge was running a cult and child shelters in Mexico. Yal is running a satanic cult in Czech Republic. And by the way, former members have very interesting articles about how he runs that organization, which we're gonna deep dive in to, I think, in our later episodes. But what's interesting that Anton Hein has a website on which he basically collects information about cults. So both Stephen Hassan in the United States and Alexander Dworkin mentioning Anton Hein's, once again, convicted PDF, who had to flee California. They mention in Stephen Hassan is mentioned in his website as credible source of information about cults, and he is sending people from his resource to Anton Hein's website. If it happens once, it might be just a coincidence. But over here in the so-called anti-cult network, this became a pattern. And turns out that, if there is a specific pattern that repeats multiple times, not just with Jorge Erdely Graham, who, by the way, had to flee Mexico, right? He was never caught. There is still an international warrant on his arrest. Same thing with Jakub Yal, who had to flee Tanzania and cannot return there right now. In the video, he says he's very, he's very worried that he cannot go back to Tanzania. Well, for what he did in Tanzania, according to the testimonies of the children, the sentence, the minimum sentence is 30 years and up to life in prison. So there is a very specific reason why he's not going to Tanzania. And if as, by the way, in the video of the blogger, it states that there was investigation and nothing was found. There was never investigation in Czech Republic, but in Tanzania, there is ongoing investigation. And this is specifically why he's not returning there. As you know, this inconvenient part about investigation was not mentioned there. You know what else was not mentioned in the video? The fact that there was a court in February of 2026, which found no issues with ALLATRA at all. It confirmed legal and patriotic nature of ALLATRA's activities in Ukraine. And this fact was not mentioned anywhere in the video, even though the gentleman who created the video went through all the website, trying to cherry pick something to present it in twisted context. Yet, this obvious fact was not fit in the narrative, so it was not mentioned at all. You know what else was not mentioned? That in 2 years ago, Rumble platform was banned in Russia for refusal to delete ALLATRA TV channel. And I want to say huge respect to Chris Pavlovsky, the guy who really stood for, what's right, for the right thing, for freedom of speech. Upon request of Russian intelligence, FSB, they conducted investigation of ALLATRA TV channels on Rumble platform. They found no violations, and they honestly said so. And because of his stance for what is right, the entire platform, Rumble, was banned in Russia. So Chris lost the market of entire country. That's a huge amount of profit from ads and so on. And he was willing to do that, to stand for what is right. And, huge respect to Chris. It really takes a lot to do that. So because of people like him, again, Pavel Durov was another person who did not, decided not to collaborate with requests from Russian FSB. Right now, he's in the lists of extremists and apparently terrorists in Russia. So is ALLATRA. It was declared extremist in Russia. Why? Because we are telling the truth. We are telling the truth that was inconvenient for somebody in Russia. The fact that Rumble decided to keep ALLATRA's channels, and Chris Pavlovsky, who is not even aware of what is ALLATRA, but he checked the channels, there were no violations and no issues whatsoever. He decided to keep it, to lose the market of entire country, but stand for the right thing. That is awesome, and really huge respect to him. Unfortunately, not everyone stands for the right thing like Chris. And for example, YouTube was multiple times deleting ALLATRA's channels upon request from Russian FSB, which means that in this company, there are spies.
Yeah, kudos to him. He he could have taken all that money from ads and the publicity of an entire country for his platform, but from my understanding, that's kind of what Rumble was created for, was freedom of speech. And we know their attempt to politicize every bit of the conversation based around whatever organization they throw in these politicians. I wouldn't be surprised if eventually we start to see a little bit more of this narrative of like Trump and ALLATRA being thrown in the same headlines, right? ALLATRA has made it very clear over and over again that it is not a political organization. And they do their best, right? Whether it's in the United States or it's in Ukraine or it's in some other country to use this anti cult rhetoric, mix it in with some form of politicians so that they can get away with, as you mentioned before, right? Having people in power that support their agenda in some way. So it's quite a scheme, but I think that people that are willing to think critically, you can, people are hip to this sort of stuff nowadays. And there's a lot of information out there, and a lot of people are becoming more and more familiar with these informational tactics. And ALLATRA's been checked left and right over and over and over again by multiple different organizations that look for some, sketchy backgrounds. Nothing's ever been found. No money has ever been taken, and nor has it actually ever been offered, for that matter. So the problem is
Yeah,
you
we,
can't
we
find
never
anything.
received a single grant. Not because we're rejected. We simply never received any offers. ALLATRA never received any grant offers and so on. And imagine this, there are so many good people around the world doing incredible things and really stand for the right thing, for truth, and doing so much without any financial support from anyone. Once again, our efforts to stand for Ukraine with Pastor Mark Burns' incredible conference that was organized in the Washington D.C. On the Capitol Hill in support of Ukraine. All of this is being twisted in this smearing publications with one narrative, right? To destroy the reputation of organization, label it as a cult, and once again, what they use in such articles, right? They often pull up Jonestown, White Brotherhood, Aum Shinrikyo. There are years of KGB sticking out of each one of those rabbit holes. And if we take, for example, Waco, Texas, 1993, the KGB specialist Igor Smirnov is advising FBI on how to deal with a group that was in Waco, Branch Davidians. It ended up in a huge tragedy. As a result of it, there was a huge division and conflict in American society. For those who are not familiar with the matter, I would suggest watching the Impact documentary, in which there is an entire section of the film dedicated to what happened there and the role of the KGB. Regarding Aum Shinrikyo and White Brotherhood, there are articles in which that is also disclosed. I'm sure there will be more information on this topic. And in that regards, they always use the same playbook when they try to attack organization, whether it's ALLATRA or, Amway, Herbalife, Jehovah Witnesses, Falun Dafa, you name it, any organization, the very same playbook. And they often use accusations of, sexual allegations, any sort of scare they can come up with. And in the end, all of it just to connect it with a political figure, political party, and then decrease their ratings and put their people up into power. So apparently that is exactly why so much effort is being put right now simultaneously, synchronously from so many ways by people connected to Russian FSB to push this narrative against ALLATRA. And once again, the entire network of so-called anti-cult is being guided by Alexander Dworkin. By the way, the article in BBC where Alexandra Stein was also participating, that article was specifically targeting ALLATRA, mentioning the Chelyabinsk Diocese of Russian Orthodox Church as their trusted source. Article in BBC was published in April 2022, so after the invasion. And all of a sudden on BBC we can see the article that is praising Alexander Dworkin as a Russian influential figure, as a US educated professor. So this article is so bizarre because in fact what is about. It's about the fact that Dworkin is trying to ban yoga in Russian jails, which he effectively did, because according to him, it makes inmates gay. So yoga makes people gay according to Dworkin, and in article about this, BBC says that Dworkin is a Moscow academic, that he is an influential figure, that he is a Professor Dworkin who is worried about Kundalini yoga, which could lead to uncontrollable sexual arousal and development of homosexual relationships between inmates. So in this bizarre article, he's referred to 4 times, and each time it's a praising sort of address where they call him US educated professor. They don't call him bizarre character with a history of mental illnesses and drug abuse, as it is, in fact, and there are documented evidence that is available in open source to that. But they refer to them in such a way.
Well, it just goes to show money can do a lot, and it does leave a trail one way or another. And a lot of these people that are writing for these big news media outlets are, you can just see that article is a great example, right? It's subtle, right? You might read through it and not realize, but they're constantly praising each other. They're constantly referencing each other. So it's very easy to find the unification of a goal here. Eventually, that paper trail, that money trail, is going to show its face, and it'll become very apparent to people. But there's only so many times you can use the same strategy before people are like, okay, like enough with this, cult BS. I think we're reaching that point at this point. It's nice of them to really put ALLATRA on blast and give a lot of attention to an organization that's doing amazing things across the planet. So at least now Americans will be they'll be directed towards an organization that's actually doing good things for the whole planet. So that's a plus. But I think it is a little concerning because when you start adding the politicization aspect to it, we know how divisive that can get. So I hope that there aren't, people caught in the crossfires of the discussion, because, obviously, you don't want to see that happen to anybody. But I think for us, it's great. It's good that people are actually going to get to, one, hear the truth and see some good work that's actually being done.
In fact, every paid campaign against us ends up backfiring. Instead of hurting, it brings more attention, more interest, and more people who choose to join us. As you can see on the screen right now, this is the graph of visitors before and after the smear campaign, just on one of the resources. Honestly, the easiest thing for us to do would be just to ignore it, not to record this video and just keep the hype going. But the love for America matters more. And people should know who stands behind this campaign and who is planning to gain from it. We've been through this multiple times. Each time before the election, there is all of a sudden spike of finances into smear campaigns against ALLATRA. So right now we're seeing that within a very short period of time, there is a synchronized effort across Russian media outlets and apparently now American bloggers and media outlets as well to put the very same narrative against ALLATRA, right? So every time that happened before, and it was used multiple times. Like, for example, in Ukraine, there were multiple politicians like Irina Vereshchuk, like Bakanov, like even the mayor of Kiev, Vitaly Klitschko. All of them, they also received the same attacks and attempts to lower their ratings before the election, connecting them to ALLATRA that was already smeared. Prior to that, there were articles against ALLATRA. It happens primarily before the elections. So in this case, apparently there is a serious influx of money, which apparently coming from Russia, from special agencies such as FSB, which are definitely benefiting from it. They are benefiting from destabilizing countries. And if we look at what they have done in Ukraine, right? With the invasion of Ukraine, it all started also with a smear campaign that Ukraine is a cult, that their population over there is satanic, and that their leadership is satanic, that they're all cultists and they don't deserve the human treatment. And now we see it's a full-scale war with the destruction, with effectively genocide of Ukrainian population. Definitely, Russian population is not going to win anything from such campaigns, and Russian FSB is definitely someone who would be interested in that. And once again, there is always a trace, and there are always communication records which could also expose where the money are coming from. The only country in which ALLATRA was prohibited is Russia. Because in Russia, no one gives a damn about laws, about any justice. They are only interested in torturing people, and that's precisely where ALLATRA is banned. When it comes to such smear campaigns, the specialists and the entire world, the people, they already know what it is. They can simply add 2 plus 2 together and see what's actually going on, what is the real and what is the fake narrative. And all these vloggers, bloggers, all these attempts from them to do this kind of things, all of it has a signature of FSB, you know, the under such activities. So we're not under anyone's control, and that's precisely why FSB was trying to fight us so hard, because we're saying what is true. So yeah, I think you were absolutely right. By investing all this money into smear campaigns, they only promoting ALLATRA, in fact, because people gonna go to the original source, they gonna verify the facts, and they see what's going on. And in fact, after each such smear campaign, there was a huge amount of people who went to ALLATRA's website, see how many things ALLATRA is doing, that all that BS has nothing to do with reality, which was put in those smearing articles, publications, all those attempts to discredit ALLATRA, they have nothing to do with reality. And you know what happens next? Those people, they join the organization, and you cannot mislead them after they know the real thing. And all the facts are there. The facts are available, so it's very easy for anyone to actually check what is real.
Can we just like run with the fact really quick that all of these
Yeah.
headlines are like pro Putin cult, like a thousand times over? Like, if ALLATRA was a pro Putin cult, why is Russia the only place that ALLATRA is banned? Like, come on, like we should just be able to wrap it up right there. Like common sense at that point. And if it's not in if it's in Ukraine, then then it's a pro-Russian cult, right? So it's very easy to see through the lies. And as you mentioned, you know, like, people get it. I think people get it at this point, and I feel bad for any of those bloggers that are unaware of the whole situation, because they're gonna get thrown into the fire with the rest of them if when all this stuff comes to light. So
yeah, and you know, I think vloggers should be asking themselves before taking the money and the order to make a hit piece like that, who is benefiting from it? Like, who would pay in order to make such a publication, especially about such character as Jakub Yal, to defend him and to go against ALLATRA, a respected organization with, you know, history of really amazing things from international conferences, the research of micro and nanoplastics, the collaboration with scientific organizations and universities across the globe. All of that is available on the website. You can go and check for yourself how many amazing things this organization is actually doing, and that none of it has anything to do with those allegations which were presented in such hit pieces. So when someone was taking that money to do such a hit piece, he should be double checking who is standing behind such an order.
I think that's a good question, and I hope in a future video we get to answer that.
We'll definitely be covering much more in our future episodes. And if you have any questions, observations, or suggestions, write them in the comment section below.